One researcher in Kentucky is counting his chickens today because they just hatched. The eggs went into orbit with the shuttle Discovery and have produced the world's first space chicks. Ed Garston has more.
Spielberg may have hit it big with E.T., but Purdue student John Vellinger has a real-life space creature. Meet E.C., experimental chick. He came out of his shell Friday after 5 days in space and a week more in an incubator. With the help of a company known more for frying than flying chicken, Vellinger sent 32 eggs up in the shuttle Discovery.
And well, he should be, because, he represents all these fine engineering students that are coming up in our country to replace you and I one day.
While there are no plans yet for a space-bound barnyard, Vellinger is hoping to see how space travel affects the orbiting eggs. He's clearly pleased by the first results.
It's the greatest feeling in the world to see dreams become reality. First ever space chick.
And just in time for Easter, the new chick, aptly named Kentucky, paid homage to the patron saint of poulet, Colonel Sanders. But this chick is bound for the Louisville Zoo, which means you'll never see this Kentucky fried. Ed Garston, CNN reporting.
That's our report for this half hour. Thanks for joining us. I'm Gordon Graham. Around the world in 30 minutes. This is Headline News.
I use Headline News.
This is Headline News.
It's always on time.
Isn't it every 30 minutes?
Yeah, every 30 minutes for 30 minutes. I get the top stories fast.
And always updated.
Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev.
What else is there?
$10 and cents. Headline Sports is next.
I can turn to it any time.
The Hollywood Minute.
I use Headline News. My schedule's packed. I don't have time to waste.
Around the world every 30 minutes, this is Headline News.
Headline News. Continuously updated. Always on time.
From Turner Broadcasting System, this is the Headline News Network.
16 candles, though we gotta say goodbye.
Hi. Maybe no one ever forgets prom night because of all the great memories. Well, Sessions brings back all those great memories with a new 4-record album called Senior Prom. Just listen.
Roses are red, my love. Hey, hey, Paula. So darling, darling, stand by me. You lost that love feeling one summer night.
But too late. This incredible 4-record and 3-cassette treasury is yours for only $19.95. 2 compact discs, only $24.95. Here's how to order.
Call toll-free 1-800-257-1333. That's 1-800-257-1333. Or send check or money order to the address on your screen.
Headline News. I'm Gordon Graham. It's Easter Sunday, and Christians around the world are spending it celebrating the day that marks the resurrection of Jesus Christ. In New York City, Cardinal John O'Connor proclaimed a message of hope during services at St. Patrick's Cathedral. In Jerusalem, the day was marked with ringing church bells and singing. And in Vatican City, more than 180,000 pilgrims gathered to hear Pope John Paul's Easter message. St. Peter's Square at the Vatican was filled to overflowing for the Pope's Easter Mass and his Urbi et Orbi address, his sermon to Rome and the world. The square has room for 170,000 worshipers, but the crowd spilled over into nearby streets as the Pope sung the Mass under a bright sun and blue skies.
Mysterium Fidei.
The Mass and the communion that followed marked the most important feast day in the Roman Catholic Church, the day of Christ's resurrection after his crucifixion.
The espressione inglese è blessed Easter in the joy of Jesus Christ, the risen Lord and Savior of the world.
As an estimated 500 million television viewers in 50 countries watched, the Pope wished the world a happy Easter in more than 50 languages.
Всех со светлым праздником воскресения Христова.
The short addresses in foreign languages were greeted by bursts of applause and flag waving from Catholics in the crowd who recognized their native tongue.
Die espressione neerlandese.
But the Pope's address contained a message directed beyond the audience of the faithful. The Pope called for an end to religious persecution, saying despite the constitutions of states and international conventions, religious freedom today is often trampled upon. And lamenting war, the Pope said the world seems to be rushing headlong towards self-destruction and death. Mentioning only Lebanon by name, calling the country beloved and tormented, John Paul offered the comfort of religion to the millions suffering from the horrors of war. History in the making in the Soviet Union. For the first time in 70 years, citizens have a choice of candidates in new parliamentary elections. Soviet reports say voter turnout today is heavy. Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev cast his ballot in Moscow. Afterwards, he said, boisterous campaigning before Election Day was what the Kremlin wanted. Much of it was done by maverick candidate Boris Yeltsin. After casting his ballot, the former Moscow Communist Party chief said the elections weren't completely democratic. In Yugoslavia's Kosovo province today, ethnic Albanians demonstrated for a fourth day. Police battled about 1,000 stone-throwing protesters with tear gas in Pristina today. This latest unrest follows 3 days of increasingly bloody protests against new rules that give greater control over the autonomous province to Serbia. Witnesses say fierce rioting in Rosovac yesterday left many demonstrators and police injured. In Lebanon today, Christian and Muslim gunners blasted rival sections of Beirut. Hospital sources report 1 person was killed and 9 others were wounded during artillery shelling in Muslim West Beirut. Sources also say more than 15 shells scored direct hits on the presidential palace and defense ministry, but there are no reports of injuries there. Some in the Mideast are trying to give peace a chance by showing that Arabs and Jews can live under the same roof as friends. Linda Scherzer reports.
They look more like old friends than strangers, and by sundown they were. Christian Arab, Israeli Jew. Longtime enemies united by conflict, but also by a strong desire for peace. Close to 100 Palestinian and Jewish families met on a hillside near Bethlehem Saturday to show their leaders that talking is the only way.
Back in the United States, when we marched through Selma and when we got to share things with people, it built up a certain momentum, a certain process.
Part of this process was just getting to know each other by spending the night in Arab homes.
This is my friend Yasmin.
Most of the Palestinian children only know Israelis as soldiers. Many of the Jewish children had learned to fear the Arabs. Soccer balls help make friends.
I think they're just like us.
There's one difference that they are free, they can do anything they like, but we're not.
As the Jewish Sabbath set in and as the Christians marked Easter weekend, that difference seemed especially clear and the search for a solution more urgent than ever.
Because you suffered from the occupation. We came here to be with you as a Jewish people.
But the peacemakers have been denounced as troublemakers by Israel's prime minister. However well-intentioned, he says, meetings like these are dangerous to the peace process. The army apparently agreed. When the group got too large, they were told to go home, breaking up a peaceful meeting for what the army says were security reasons. The Israelis left, vowing to stay in touch with their new friends and promising that what they planted in Beit Sahor were the very seeds for the future. Linda Scherzer, CNN, the West Bank.
American officials deny British media reports that the U.S. has identified the bombers of the Pan Am Flight 103. The London Sunday Times says U.S. investigators have discovered the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine General Command blew up the jet over Scotland last December, killing 270 people. National Security Advisor Brent Scowcroft says investigators have reached no such conclusion.
There's a marvelous bit of detective work going on in this whole thing, and it's incredible how they're able to develop their leads. But so far as I know, we're not that far along. We do not know specifically who did it.
Last week, investigators denied similar reports about the identity of the Pan Am bombers. Well, the federal government reportedly is considering tighter export laws to stem the buildup of chemical weapons by third world countries. Today's New York Times says the Bush administration wants to bar the export of chemicals and equipment that can be used for making poison gas in those countries. U.S. officials reportedly say the laws have many of the same loopholes that allowed West European countries to help third world countries build poison gas factories. Environmental experts are meeting in Kuwait to discuss cleanup of the Persian Gulf, polluted with debris from the Iran-Iraq war. 8 countries, including Iran and Iraq, began a 2-day meeting to discuss plans to clear the waterway of sea mines and dangerous pollutants. U.S. naval experts say up to 200 mines laid by Iran and Iraq may still be in the Gulf despite a year-long mine-sweeping effort. Fishermen are fearing a massive loss of income from the nation's biggest oil spill, met today with Exxon officials in Alaska to seek compensation. Millions of gallons of crude oil spilled Friday when the tanker Exxon Valdez ran aground, creating a 50-square-mile slick. Officials say the oil has contaminated the waters around Reef and Bly Islands, jeopardizing wildlife. Today, one official reported observing 75 ducks and 2 otters coated in oil. The nation's natural resources are being preserved by 2 traditional adversaries. A conservation group and the Defense Department have agreed to jointly take care of millions of acres of land. Greg Lamont reports.
This breathtakingly beautiful, unspoiled land is an ecological oasis. It is the home to at least 350 species of birds, thousands of acres of undisturbed sand dunes, sensitive plant species, and acres of wetlands and woodlands. But this biologically rich environment isn't located in a national park. This is Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, the military's missile launch and test site facility. Because missile testing requires vast stretches of open land to minimize possible hazards from aborted launches, Vandenberg sits on 100,000 acres of land, 2/3 of which remain in a natural state. In an effort to preserve the biological diversity found at Vandenberg and at the more than 900 defense installations across the country, the Department of Defense has signed an agreement with the Nature Conservancy, a private conservation organization, to maintain the natural resources and ecological diversity of the 25 million acres of land military bases now occupy.
The Nature Conservancy's whole job is to protect and manage disappearing species and rare and endangered species. The Department of Defense is committed to that. In theory, they don't really have the in-house expertise. And what we hope to do under this agreement is to provide technical assistance to help them to achieve what we'd like to see them do and what they would like to do on their lands.
Some of the immediate things, as I mentioned before, that we have in mind is to start doing some surveys here. Find out what we have, what needs better protection, what can we do to enhance endangered species? You know, we may have species here we don't know about that need some help.
Unlike other public lands that tend to be clustered in remote, unpopulated areas, many defense installations are located along coastlines or near urban centers. Consequently, they often harbor the last remnants of imperiled habitats.
When it's gone, it's gone. And ours is still here and being preserved. And so that, to me, is a tremendous benefit, to the public, that it's being saved.
I think this is one of the noblest things that we can do as a society, and certainly the Nature Conservancy as an organization, to try and protect our natural heritage for future generations.
Some might think the military's agreement with an environmental group makes for strange bedfellows, but an Air Force spokesman says the military has always been charged with defending the nation. Now it's just doing its part to help defend the nation's natural resources. Greg Lamont, CNN, Vandenberg Air Force Base, California.
Another natural treasure, Yellowstone National Park, is very much alive and well. Nature is slowly healing the wounds left from last summer's fires that burned almost 1 million acres of parkland. Park officials say the park will have fewer tourists this year because many tourists think it burned up. Amtrak railway officials are investigating the cause of yesterday's train crash in Trenton, Michigan. More than 20 people were injured when the passenger train slammed into a flatbed truck. Rick Moore reports.
One witness to the collision says it sounded like an explosion of dynamite. People on the scene say the driver of the truck drove around lowered crossing gates, the train speeding toward it.
He rolled up to the divide there and come out the right lane into the left lane. And I thought he was going to stop because we saw the train and heard it coming. And he just come on through it like he wanted to commit suicide.